We are live. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. I am your host, Blake Ruffino, one of your hosts, Blake Ruffino. Alongside me is the former and the best long snapper in Rhode Island history, Joe DeLeone. Joe, what's happening? You're muted. Hold on.
Wait, we're here.
There you go.
I'm doing great, minus the mute issue there, but you're getting much more nice when you lead me in. I really like this, Blake. I like the energy. I like feeling good about myself coming into the show.
You're a full-tilt diva. Let's call it what it is. You're a full-tilt diva. You want to be, pampered and go, you're like a woman. You want to be taken on dates and pampered. But let me tell you
said it yourself. I was a long snapper. I am the most pampered football player on any roster. I'm not getting hit. I get to sit around and sit on the bench during practice. I've got maybe 10 total reps. I'm the most pampered man on a roster.
No doubt. Let me tell you a quick story.
Yes.
I'm not going to name drop, okay, but we beat a team when I was at Southeastern, and we went out partying. And I'm talking about, dude, our team, we just had dudes, that could go out and just party, okay? So we all lived pretty much in the same apartment complex once we got out of the dorms, and so it was walking distance to the bars and the clubs. So one night we, great victory. We go shower, shit, shower, shave, go to the club. And one of the long snappers, I'm pretty sure he was a walk-on long snapper, by the way, which makes it even worse.
Oh, God.
Started hitting on this guy's girlfriend. Okay?
Oh, no. Oh, what are we doing here, man?
So I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, so all the team that's in the club, they're like, yeah, Blake, we're ready to fight this guy. He's on, he's messing with her dude. I'm like, first off, the only person that snaps a ball on this team that y'all need to fight for is Daddy, okay? Nobody else. Nevertheless, we all started fighting. But nevertheless.
He was hitting on somebody, not somebody on the team.
I'm talking about she was so good looking, too. I'm talking about, you never heard the song, She's a Dime, that's top of the line, cute face, slim waist with a big behind? That's her. Whoever rapped that song was rapping it about her. I'm talking about really good looking young lady.
Did he have a shot? Did he have any shot?
Here's the crazy thing. He might be the ugliest human being on the face of the planet, but women love him.
He's probably got the juice. He's got the long snapper charisma, man. That's what it is. That's all what it is. Every girl won't admit it.
Don't say long snappers have juice. That just doesn't roll off.
We absolutely do. No one wants to admit it, but all the ladies love the long snappers, Blake. That's the truth.
Jason Brumfield inside the YouTube chat.
Every show.
Joe kisses a picture of Brian Kelly every night before every show for good luck. Is this true? Can you confirm or deny?
It's not true. Jason, I'm excited to see what next show's tidbit is. It's every single show. I give him credit for the consistency. I will say that much.
What you should have done is reach behind you and grab that 8-ball and say, do I kiss Brian Kelly?
I don't even know if it's a working. Oh, it was glued down. I just ripped this off.
Well, you got to pay for it. You might want to put it back. What if it rolls off during the show? How often
it's going to.
Look at you breaking stuff in the studio. Oh,
this is your fault. This is not
First off, I didn't tell you to grab it. I said you should have grabbed it. I didn't say you did. But you should have then.
I'm Captain Intrusive Thoughts over here. If you tell me to grab something, I'm absolutely going to grab it, Blake. But now I have to address that. Hopefully no one notices it's out of place when I go back to fix it later. But nonetheless, we got a lot to get to today, though.
We do. Former ESPN's exec John Skipper suggests a Pac-12 ACC merger. First off, John Skipper is probably the biggest idiot I've ever met in my entire life.
Oh, you met him?
Yeah, in passing. Yep, in passing. We had some mutual friends, and they said, hey, this is, ESPN's John Skipper. And I'm like, hey, aren't you the guy that got, busted for cocaine? And he walked off. So,
oh, my God.
It's true.
Yes. Yeah.
It is true. He got busted with cocaine. But it does say something interesting that the Pac-12 and ACC might have a merger. John, I'm going to tell you where I think he's got it wrong, but what is holding up what I am hearing. Now, I told you 2 weeks ago that I'm hearing of some teams in the Big 12 that the Big 12 is doing it, but I think it's a little bit of payback from 2010 when the Pac-12 was trying to poach Oklahoma Texas and Texas A&M at that moment. We'll talk about that here tonight. But the first thing, Joe, that I do want to talk about is the players that may have a breakout season in 2023. I really like this. And let me tell you, I really enjoyed going through this. I think
same.
I think that the 2, 3, 4 players that I have in mind are going to beat yours. You ever see Joe, you ever see like the things on like TikTok or YouTube where like you got to pick a category, like you got to pick 3 and you got to compare who's his best? I think we should do that here tonight.
Okay, how do we want to go about that, though? Just go back and forth at the end of it, after we have our list, who we think had the better list?
Yeah.
Is that how we want to do it?
Yeah, right. I think we should do that.
I'm comfortable with that. I've got 4 guys in like a 5th addition that I threw in there. I will admit one of these is really far-fetched, but I think that you're going to appreciate the reasoning for why I pulled it. It is... The remaining 3, I wouldn't be shocked if we didn't have some crossovers.
We might have some crossover.
One of them is like completely out of the spectrum of what would be considerable. But I think it's a really good sleeper pick to bring up.
All right, so let's get into that here today. We had to go a little bit earlier because I had some other obligations with LSU later on today as they start spring football tomorrow. So we got the baseball, basketball, and football. Joe, it's probably the most chaotic time of the year. But I'm glad to be here and glad to be doing this. So let's do this. Let's talk about our good friends over at betonline.ag. Heisman odds. Who's going to, where's Lamar Jackson going to ultimately land? Whatever you think you can humanly bet on, you need to go to betonline.ag today and use that promo code BELIEVE50 at checkout to get a 50% welcome bonus on that first deposit. Let's talk about them. We're back in 50 seconds. Joe, I'm really fired up for this segment. We'll talk about it next. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way for you to wager on all of your favorite sports, contests, events with the first-to-market odds and lines. Find reviews for all the news for each league, including Major League Baseball, NFL, NBA, NHL, combat sports, college sports, esports, and even golf. BetOnline continues to be the top online resource for all of your sports information for live in-game betting, props, and futures. Head on over to BetOnline today and use your mobile device to join and make your first sports bet. Use our promo code BELIEVE50, that's BELIEVE50, BLEAV 50, to receive your 50% off welcome bonus on your first deposit. That's betonline.ag, betonline.ag.
It hits different, man.
Newsflash, you're not. Roy says on Facebook, you guys are great. I almost listen every day. Awesome. I love when all of our listeners intertwine and listen to us every day. Royce, do us a favor, brother, if you do, by hitting the like and share. Penn Jones says it's the man and Doogie, the man Blake and Doogie Howser. Why do they hate you so much? You're like the canal of the Ruffino and Joe show.
So you know what's actually really funny? So this show is obviously live broadcasted on this YouTube channel, but then it effectively is re-aired on the Believe YouTube channel where I post it. The Believe YouTube channel, we got like 3,000 views on that Notre Dame video. So on this channel, everyone sides with you. On the Believe channel, all the Notre Dame fans are siding with me. It's really funny. I just think because I support Notre Dame, I'm automatically the villain in this circumstance. So it is what it is. I also look like I'm 15, so it comes with the territory, but I don't really care.
You do look like you live in Milwaukee and eat people. Anyway,
thanks for that. We made it so.
Reference.
I know.
Reference.
Today I was thinking about how long we've lasted without a Jeffrey Dahmer reference.
That.
Yeah, and then here we go. You bring it back again. It's
that urge. It's like an evil tick, I got to get it out. All right. So, Joe, in case some people are just getting in and they didn't hear our opening monologue, we're going to pick some players that we think are going to be some breakout superstars or just breakout stars, breakout guys this upcoming season in the 2023 season. Now, normally, I give you actually every show. I think we're like 22 shows now. Mm-hmm. I usually give you the first word. But since we're comparing who has the better team in all of this, I'm going to go first because I'm the eldest.
Okay.
I'm going to tell you, there's a guy that I've really been keeping my eyes on. I know that me and you talked about him during the season last year when we did our stuffs on Saturday mornings to pregame the SEC. But with my first overall pick, it was a guy that I think is going to be a breakout star. Mikael Williams, the DN edge rusher out of Georgia. Joe, he had 33 pressures last season, 28 tackles, 6.5 tackles for loss, 4.5 sacks, and the best overall rate of getting a pressure at 8.8 pressures per snaps. So I've been on him for a while now. I know that when me and you did the Twitter spaces, I said that Mikael Williams is going to be the next Nolan Smith. Like, he's that kind of dude. He's got that kind of explosiveness. He's just a really damn good pass rusher. With my number 1 overall pick, I'm going to take Mikael Williams as my breakout superstar defensively, and especially on a really loaded Georgia team that will be here next year.
So that was my only defensive pick that I had written down was Mikael Williams from Georgia. Dude, I was doing my research. I ended up with a bunch of quarterbacks, but I was like, okay, let's pivot. Let's look for an edge rusher that makes sense. It was easy to look for a Georgia defensive lineman, but looking back at the 2022 recruiting class, one guy stood out to me at the very top of that list. And I'm referring to Mikael Williams, who was one of the highly recruited edge rushers, and I believe was one of the most highest ranked edge rusher consistently across a lot of websites. You mentioned the pressures. For him to have 4.5 sacks and that many pressures, we also, to add context for anyone who maybe was living under a rock and not watching Georgia football, Mikael Williams didn't really play that many snaps considering
he only
some
played
other guys.
around 200 snaps last season, which of 200 snaps, Joe, he had 33 pressures. And of those 200 snaps, dude, I think they said 75 of them were passes. Like, that is ridiculous. So of 75 passing attempts, Joe, he had 33 pressures. That's pretty damn elite, dude.
It's bonkers. And I think that unlike Harold Perkins, who has already broken out, we can't talk about him because we already know who he is.
And I wanted to put him on there so bad, but
I knew
he's already a breakout star. By the way, has a new number.
What did he switch to?
Number 4.
Is that what he wore in high school? What's the reasoning?
I think so, yeah.
Somebody's got to ask him. But I just think that Mikael Williams playing on a very loaded defense, for him to still be productive, and I think most importantly, he started to ascend more towards the end of the season. We started to see what he could do when he played in the national championship game. When he played against Ohio State, there's one play that he makes, I think it was against Paris Johnson or DeJuan Jones, where it's just a freaky play where you see the natural athleticism. You see that he's still
the one where he did the what I call the side dip over rip.
Yes.
The side dip over rip. That's, Joe, that move as a former O-lineman, it is the most elite. You know who else does it? Nolan Smith did it last year, and Harold Perkins. It is their go-to move. These dudes on the edge, is that what you're mentioning is their go-to moves.
You have to be freaky athletic and freaky flexible to pull off that move effectively. And I have rewatched the Ohio State-Georgia game too many times because I've watched it for DeJuan Jones, for Paris Johnson. I just watched it for CJ Stroud for these evaluations. And that play keeps showing up. And I keep thinking, man, I got to pay attention to this Mikael Williams kid because he is so freaking good.
Right.
But I love that. I think that we're starting to see that Kirby knows that this kid is next, and he is the next guy. He's not an interior guy, but he is for 100%. I think he could maybe even be better than Nolan Smith, who I played well, but never really lived up to that level of production.
He just didn't have the production because his injury, his season got cut short with the pec injury. Right.
Yes.
All right. Who are you going to take with your number 1 overall pick?
This one's a layup. Cade Klubnik from Clemson.
Oh, okay. He was in my honorable mentions. Okay.
I was debating if this fit as a breakout star, but the way that I see Cade Klubnik, he didn't play in enough games for me to sit here and say this is a surefire kid. Because if we look at the guy before him, DJ Uiagalelei, was great in the 2 games he played his freshman year, and now he stinks. Cade, though, one of the things that I paid attention to, Blake, when I was doing my research for the 3 guys that I have, is what offensive coordinators relocated that were top in the country. Or I looked for defensive coordinators. And Garrett Riley transitioning to Clemson is the biggest hire in the coordinator coaching carousel. him stepping in and for what he did with Max Duggan, who I'm sorry to admit this, as much as I love Max Duggan, is not a very good quarterback. For as productive as he was, and we know that he has accuracy limitations, decision-making limitations, was a tough kid. I think that in this new offense, this new look Clemson offense with a strong offensive line returning, the kid Klubnik is going to be in the Heisman conversation. That is not a hyperbole, and it should not be. Clemson is back on the map, and this, for me, put them back on the map by hiring Riley, and Klubnik was the top recruit at quarterback in his class, and we are going to see that production next season early on.
I put him in my honorable mention because here's the reason why. I think for me, although I believe that Garrett Riley is a really good offensive coordinator, I want to see Dabo let the reins go first. Okay. And I just want to see, is he fully going to give Garrett Riley the ultimate say-so when it comes to everything offensively? Now, do I think that he is? Yes. Do I think that Dabo is a smart enough coach and a good enough coach to adapt and do these things? Yes and yes, because you don't go make a hire like Garrett Riley. You don't pay the money that you're paying him. You don't pay the buyout money for him to come to Clemson if you're not preparing yourself to take this step back. And I talked to a buddy of mine that's a beat writer and a radio host at Clemson when the move was made. And he said that he got on the record from Dabo that Dabo does not want to be in the day-to-day offensive play calling duties, that Dabo really does want to be this CEO. You know, the only name, image, and likeness that we have around here is our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. Like, I think that that's what he wants to do. But you know what else that Dabo's done? Dabo has opened up his arms to the portal because Dabo knows, look, I probably am going to have to do this. I can't continue to do what I'm doing. I really like Kate Klubnik. He had some really rough scenarios that he had to go through last year. I remember, what was it, Joe, the first possession that he had against Notre Dame. I think that what they were on like the 4-yard line, and they were telling him to get them out of that situation. He's a freshman. I think he got put in some really bad spots. I honestly thought that he had flashes against Tennessee. Here's another thing too. The 2 touchdowns to 3 interceptions for him last season don't bother me.
No.
But I told you this yesterday when we talked about accuracy, right? Him going 61 of 100, I really like. I really like, because the games that he was in, the things that he was doing was against really good teams. Like, you got a really good idea of what you have in Kate Klubnik, and he's a really good runner. So I had him as my honorable mention. I think that he could do some good things. With my number 2 overall pick, and I'm going to be labeled a homer with this one. Okay, no, it's not Harold Perkins.
What else you guys at?
But let me ask you this. Where do you have Eli Ricks ranked in your defensive backs for the NFL draft? Do you think he's a first rounder?
No.
Okay.
No. I don't have as one of the top DBs now.
Okay. But most people do, don't they? If I'm not mistaken. Like, I'm not just
at the beginning of the season, Eli Ricks was, and it's the circumstance of oftentimes these early rankings are based on season awards and whatnot. I think a lot of people came to the realization that Eli Ricks is physically a bit limited. He's stiff. He's not very flexible. He's a zone-specific corner.
I could have told you that.
Yeah, he's a zone-specific corner. Are you going to say Desmond Ricks?
No, I'm actually going – no, I wouldn't be a homer with that one. I'm actually going to go LSU wide receiver Malik Neighbors. What's interesting about him, okay, and I've been on him – like, beginning of LSU's camp last year, I was all over him because I said this, Joe, literally, as LSU starts camp tomorrow, and we will be there, I said this connection between Jaden Daniels and Malik Neighbors is unreal. Here's a stat for you. He was the number 1 in the SEC in catches at 72. He was number 2 in the SEC with and receiving yards with 1,107. Now, his touchdowns are going to have to get better for him to be a breakout star, but I think that they will. Joe, he had 128 receiving yards against Georgia and really exposed Keely Ringo. Keely Ringo went out there and ran a 4.3 something, 4.4 flat, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
And had a lot of really, I mean, look, he's got speed. Malik Neighbors turned on the jets and left him in the dust. And I think he can be I think Malik Neighbors can be everything everybody thought Kayshon Boutte would be this season, right? I think that there are teams that have these specific position groups that, like, you're always just going to get really good dudes from this school at this position. Look at what Alabama's doing along the defensive line. Hell, Washington's got like 72 of them. The Commanders has like 72 of them. They do some really good things along the defensive line. For LSU, it's wide receivers. Dude, I know that he had an off the field issue during Mardi Gras. That case got dropped because it was kind of bogus. But nevertheless, Joe, he had the most quiet 72 catches to lead the SEC. He had the most quiet 1,000-yard season, and he had the most quiet SEC championship game that I think that I can remember, because nobody is talking about a team that everybody believes that if LSU can win the SEC West, okay, and compete with Alabama, well, Joe, he was their offensive juggernaut. So for this reason alone, I think a face of a program or an offense besides a quarterback who may make that next step to be a household name is Malik Neighbors. Now, last thing I'll say with him is he was returning punts and fumbled 2 of them against Florida State, and you had LeBron James tweeting at him. Like that. I mean, it was literally the worst moment a player can literally have.
Yeah.
And so the only thing he did in response was go out there and have another 70 catches, another 1,000 yards, and he just really dominated some really good defensive backs.
I like this pick. I'm not going to give you full credit because it is a homer pick. Homer picks
I'm
aren't
okay
allowed.
with that.
But
I'm okay with that.
I do agree with you that Malik Neighbors doesn't get brought up enough when we talk about LSU wide receivers. We wasted so much of our breath on Kayshon Boutte, who never lived up to the expectations that we hoped for. And I'm honestly past him after the way that he performed at the NFL Combine. He was extremely underwhelming. But I think that Neighbors, with all the distractions at the wide receiver position, didn't get the recognition that he deserved for being as good of a player he is. I'll throw this out there. I have said that Jaden Daniels is the quarterback that Brian Kelly has never had at Notre Dame. I think that Neighbors is one of the receivers that Brian Kelly never had when he was at Notre Dame that he wishes he could have had. I think he's a great player. I like this pick. I will push back slightly because he was productive, but to your point, did not get the recognition and should get recognition as one of the top receivers in college football.
No, and you know what's crazy, Joe? He didn't even make an all-SEC team, right?
Which is nuts.
Which is you lead the conference in catches and you lead in your second in receiving yards. And Joe, he didn't even make an all-SEC team, right? Like, I mean, I'm sitting here trying to ask the questions of like, what's going on there? All right, who's your number 2 overall pick? Hold on. You know what? I should have done this from the beginning. You ready? Who's your number 2 overall pick?
My number 2 overall pick is Tanner Mordecai, quarterback, University of Wisconsin.
Ooh.
No, Tanner Mordecai. Ooh. This is a good pick. Tanner Mordecai. Is that an ew or an O? Is that a displeasure?
Okay, explain it. Sell me on it. Sell me on Tanner Mordecai.
Tanner Mordecai at SMU, man, we're talking about quiet players last year. Dude, he had a really, really, by the way, if you hate this pick, you're going to hate the next one. He had such a productive year last year at SMU, but like SMU was okay, so they didn't really get the recognition that they deserved. But Tanner Mordecai has 33 passing touchdowns. He goes for over 3,000 passing yards, 65% completion percentage, and only 10 interceptions. My biggest takeaway, though, here, he's transferring to Wisconsin, a team that added some talented receivers.
And a great offensive coordinator.
But that's my big thing here is that as divided as I believe the college football world is on Phil Longo, is that Drake May's doing? Is it Phil Longo's doing? Phil Longo has produced a lot of very productive quarterbacks in the history of college football that he has had the chance to work with. Drake May happens to be one of the very talented players that he's had the chance to work with recently. Mordecai, I think, stepping into a situation where Longo had one of the most productive offenses in the country, a top passing offense in the country that averaged 309 passing yards per game. That to me is very promising. I think that Tanner Mordecai stepping into a division, a conference that lacks DB talent, that lacks passing defenses to slow down an offense like this, I really wouldn't be shocked if Mordecai doesn't go for over 45 touchdowns, 40 touchdowns, and over 4,000 passing yards. I think he's set up to succeed, and I'd be shocked if he fails.
Well, you're going to really find out with him because if I'm not mistaken, either week 1 or week 2, they play at Washington State. They got to go to Pullman, right?
Yeah.
But to your point, and I'm trying to pull this up. Okay, so they have Buffalo to start the season off, then Washington State and Pullman, Georgia Southern, Purdue, Rutgers, Iowa, Illinois,
Not
Ohio
a tough
State,
schedule.
Indiana, Northwestern, Nebraska, Minnesota. That's not a tough schedule. The toughest game that you got on that schedule right now is Ohio State. And from a defensive perspective, even though they've lost some dudes, look, man, Iowa's replenishing their defense. So we'll see. I don't hate that pick. I don't hate that pick. Let me tell you the only thing I hate about that pick is I don't like when people overreact to a group of 5 quarterback going to a power 5, okay, and saying this guy's going to be good. I don't like that at all. Right now, are there exceptions to that ruling? Yes. Like there are always exceptions to the rules, right? Mm-hmm. But historically, when guys do that, it does not bode well, okay? So the only pushback that I'm going to give you is, yeah, he did that at SMU. But, I mean, the Big Ten doesn't have scrubs, okay? Like, they don't have scrubs. So we'll have to wait and see. And who's he going to throw it to, okay? Now, I know that we talked about Wisconsin a little bit, but you still, like, Joe, they're going through a completely different offensive overhaul. Now, I like Luke Fickell. I've always liked him. I just don't know if I'm going to go there yet. All right. My number 3 overall pick is actually a duo. Okay.
Oh, I've also got a duo for my number 3 overall pick.
Do you really?
Yeah. It's not going to be yours. It's not yours. I guarantee it's not yours.
Okay.
You're going to hate it.
Yeah, I probably will. Jet Johnson and Nathaniel Watson at Mississippi State, linebackers. Joe, the most interesting thing and the biggest, and I'm talking about the biggest oversight from the SEC a season ago was the 2 linebackers at Mississippi State.
Okay.
Jet Johnson led the conference with 115 tackles and 3 sacks. And Nathaniel Watson had 113 tackles and was number 2 in the SEC with 6 sacks. I'm going to tell you a little something here. Now, they lose Tyrus Sweet. I get that. They lose Emmanuel Forbes. I get that. But what they got returning in that front 7 with these 2 dudes, bro, between the both of them, they got 230 tackles. They are tackling machines. The simple fact that people think that Zach Arnett is just a horrible coach, I don't know where they get it from. Now, they got a lot that they're going to have to overcome. Mississippi State lost their head coach. Mike Leach is something that's extremely unfortunate, okay? Extremely unfortunate. But, dude, Jet Johnson and Nathaniel Watson can absolutely play. I'm going to make you this bet right now.
Okay.
When we talk about this in a year from now, you're going to tell me, Blake, Nathaniel Watson can play. Because what he's going to do in the combine is he's going to go out there. He's going to probably run a 4.55, 4.6 at 230, 235 pounds. You're going to go look at his stats at Mississippi State, and you're going to be like, damn, bro, he's got 3 seasons with 100 tackles. He's got multiple seasons with 6 and 7 sacks. It is the best. I'm going to make this right. I'm going to make this right now. Of a linebacker, not maybe traditional, but from a linebacker core, there's not a linebacker core better in the country than what you'll see in Starkville on a Saturday night. And I will tell you this is the kind of stuff that I think separates the SEC, right? Because when you think of Mississippi State under Mike Leach, what did you think about? You thought about Air Raid. You thought about Will Rogers, who also is returning. You thought about so many different things that about Mississippi State. It all had to do offensively. Joe, defensively, they weren't scrubs.
No.
It wasn't like TLC. We don't want no scrubs. Scrubs, no one but me. Okay, dude, I am telling you that when you have two linebackers that have that many tackles, okay,
That one's definitely in the weeds. Because I do agree with you that Mississippi State had a very underrated defense. But let me ask you this: like, what's their ceiling that you're projecting here? Like, what do you?
Here's my hot take of the day. Okay, I think that Zach Arnett and Mississippi State's going to surprise some people. I think they're going to win 8 games.
I think that's plausible. I think it's possible.
If you ask anybody, it's not plausible. Okay, because they lost their head coach, they've lost some guys. I'm just look. I will also make this bold prediction, brother. I watched LSU film and I watched Georgia film, and I really been watching a lot of Alabama film lately because I wanted to see their offensive line. They got some dudes up front. And I think that the simple nature that Mississippi State's going to slow things down a little bit. I think what you're going to do is you're going to start seeing, hey, man, they got some athletes. So I don't know what I'm necessarily expecting, but how in the world are you going to tell me that these two guys, between the both of them, have 230 tackles that they're not – you didn't even know who they were? Right, like
I've heard of. I know who I'm aware of them, but like they're not on my radar as draft prospects. And I'm going to be completely honest, they probably won't be.
I didn't mean it like that. It was a horrible way to put it.
Yeah.
What I meant was just like you didn't even think about going to them. No. But I'm watching Alabama film. I'm watching LSU film. I'm watching all this film, and all I keep hearing all the live long day. You ready for it? Jet Johnson, Nathaniel Watson. I was like, if Brad Nessler says Nathaniel Watson one more time, I'm gonna throw up. Okay, but I can't because he's all over the place, Joe. He's everywhere. They are the best sideline to sideline linebacker duo in the country. It's not in Georgia. It's not at LSU. It's not at Alabama. It's not Ohio State. It's not at Penn State. It's not at Clemson or Texas A&M. It's in Mississippi State. It's in Starkville.
I don't mind the pick. I don't know if I would have gone that deep, but here's one that's going to – all right. It's terrible. This is terrible. You're going to hate this. So here's my duo.
So here's your third overall pick. Hold on.
Kind of funny how it worked out this way that our last picks both ended up being duos. Okay, so I really dug deep here. Like I dug way too deep. I went on my tinfoil hat theory run of trying to find the most unique pick here.
There's nothing that I expected something out of
one of the most productive offenses in the country over the past couple years.
You go offensive line duos. Swear to God. Okay.
Nope. That would have been a really good one if I did the Oregon offensive tackles. You just gave me an idea that I should have done. Johnny Cornelius, the Rhode Island
tackle. They were
tackle.
also my honorable mentions.
Oh man, that would have been a good one.
Yep.
One of the most productive offenses in the country over the past couple of years was at Western Kentucky. The year before that offensive coordinator was at a school called Houston Baptist, which is an FCS program.
Yes.
The offensive coordinator, his name is Zach Kitley. He coached Bailey Zappi, who went on to the NFL. He coached Austin Reed, who almost topped in the portal and went somewhere, but decided to stick it out with the Hilltoppers. They were number 15 in the country in total offense, one of the best passing attacks in the country. Do you know where he is this season?
Where?
He's at Texas Tech. For my duo, and this pains me to pick this guy. It pains me because I think he kind of stinks. But I believe that Tyler Show and their leading receiver from last year, Jerand Bradley, who had 700 yards, and I think he's a redshirt freshman, led the team in receiving. I think you insert Kitley, who has, again, taking total – it's not like he's taken quality players and turned them into elite players. He's taken absolute nobodies and put them onto a national radar of people that we're talking about. We were talking about Austin Reed as one of the best transfer portal quarterbacks because of what he did at Western Kentucky. So I think Tyler Show and Jerand Bradley are going to have a stupidly productive season. And we're all going to be sitting here like, where the hell did this come from, Tyler Show? You stunk the whole time you were at Texas Tech. I think
what's
coming.
interesting now that now that I'm thinking about this, and what's interesting, I'm actually going to take a step back and not argue with you. Here's why.
Good.
Because, well, here's my thought process.
Okay.
Are we sold on Texas and Oklahoma?
No. Or Texas, TCU either, or the top teams in the Big 12, or Kansas State.
My only thought process would be is if TCU can do it, can Texas Tech?
Yeah, I think it's plausible, and I think that this hiring is so underrated. It wasn't even reported on. You look at any article, and I looked up a bunch of them that list the top transition hires for offensive coordinators. Kitley's not even brought up once.
The only thing, though, brother, is Texas Tech has some really below average talent. Okay, like I'm talking about, like,
yeah,
and the simple fact Texas lost to them is even more comical. Let's just see. I think that you look. At least I stayed in the SEC with my duo. You're going all the way to Texas Tech. The last time Texas Tech's been relevant, God, Michael Crabtree was making unbelievable catches.
Yeah.
I mean, well, they did get to a Cotton Bowl, and I think either they won or lost to Ole Miss. I can't remember. I just think that's so far out of left field, Joe. You thought mine was out of left field. What about yours? I mean, yours is more than left field. Yours is in the nosebleed at Rosenblatt selling hot dogs. That's how far you ain't got yours.
Because the rest of the ones that I listed, the intention was, let's pull some guys that everyone's going to be talking about that are going to realistically. I wanted at least one that was far-fetched. I wanted one that was at least far-fetched, and my trail of thoughts and statistics and information, I just think that Kitley is somebody who is not brought up enough as being one of the brighter offensive minds in college football, and he's clearly positively impacted every person that he's worked with every step of the way. So I think that one has some sneaky potential.
I'm going to be honest. I think I won.
You had better. Well, I don't have any defensive picks is the problem. So you took you took oh my God, Michael Wright. I'm blanking. Michael Williams. Sorry, you took him from me, so that one deprived me of that. But I think it's
and the duo Mississippi State, and then you had Kate Klubnik, Tanner Mordecai, and then you had the Rudy Poos in Texas Tech.
I would like to revisit this. We need to write this down, and I would love to revisit this at the end of the season.
I keep my notes for every single episode. Every single episode, I keep my notes. Here's my last honorable mention that I had that I thought you were going to take. I thought you were going to go Drew Aller at Penn State.
I wasn't going to.
The only reason why I didn't pick him is because he was the number one quarterback in his class.
Right.
And so, but I'm going to tell you something, brother. Let me tell you something, brother. Like, my name's Hulk Hogan. The more and more and more I look at Penn State, and the more and more I look at Ohio State, I just don't know if Penn State's not going to win that division.
I think it's possible, and it all falls on the shoulders of Aller. And I'm a big fan of what he does. He's got all the traits, and it's just the circumstance of, the Quinn Ewers type guy that's got the big arm and can move.
Well, they got receivers. They got the offensive line. They got the running backs. They got arguably one of the best DBs in the country. Mm-hmm. They return linebackers. They return defensive linemen. I'm going to tell you, if they don't win in Happy Valley, James Franklin's in trouble.
No, he should be, because he's got everything set up. He's got all the recruits, and there's a reason why I named them as an overrated one. My one honorable mention to throw out there that I did have, Will Howard at Kansas State. I thought that the offense moved a lot more efficiently when Will Howard took over. Yeah, and it just depends on how he does with no Deuce Vaughn there. But big, strong kid at quarterback, and I think he's got a lot of potential. It was 4-star. We'll see what he does.
I don't mind that one. I think that's a good one, but you're just too quarterback heavy.
I know it's hard. It's hard not to pick these quarterbacks, man. because like that's all we talk about.
Yeah, it's true. That's why I didn't pick them, because I think they're spoiled rich kids. All right, so let's do this. Joe, we got to get to John Skipper, the ESPN executive, talking about a merger between the ACC and the Pac-12. But before we do that and close out the show, do you want to tell everybody where they can catch where we bet everything that we do?
Yes. We go on over to betonline.ag, which has all the updated news, odds, and information for all of your sports betting needs. I say this every show. I get bored easily watching basketball. I need to make it a little more fun. And if you're like me and you need to get through the off season, go on over to betonline.ag, use promo code BELIEVE50 to get that 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. BetOnline, where the game starts.
So let me start off by saying this. Okay, if you missed it, John Skipper, he's a former ESPN executive, said that he thought that there had been talks about the ACC and the Pac-12 possibly merging. Well, let me tell you something. There's two problems with this. Number one, if John Skipper told me anything, I'm taking it with a grain of salt. I think that John Skipper has been one of, if not the worst, executives at ESPN. He turned them very political. He turned them in so many different ways that a lot of people have, Joe, like I remember as a kid, okay, I watched ESPN religiously. Buddy, outside of watching sporting events and Scott Van Pelt's show, I don't watch a single thing on that network. I can't stomach what they're doing. Like I really can't, because I don't want to hear anybody's political view, right, left, center. I don't care. Mm-hmm. I don't think John Skipper's making this out of a whim, but here's the problem with this. I think the Pac-12 should merge with the Big 12, but let me give you a little bit of a history lesson. In 2010, there was a conference realignment. We remember it all. Texas Tech, Texas A&M and Missouri going to the SEC. Like, we remember the conference realignment. Well, the Pac-12 was actively trying to poach Texas and Oklahoma and other schools. Well, the Big 12 was able to settle down Oklahoma and Texas and keep them in the Big 12. Didn't last long, because now they're coming into the SEC in 2024. I think it's a little bit of payback, maybe, okay, from the Big 12 trying to poach some of these teams. But the biggest problem with the ACC and Pac-12 merger, it's literally across country, okay? Like, we're doing all these things for player safety. Could you imagine Oregon and Clemson playing in Eugene, okay, on Saturday night at 9 or 10 o'clock? It would literally be a close to a 1 a.m. kickoff and a 4 a.m. finish East Coast time when you're just boarding the plane. It is, Joe.
Yeah, the timing's not wrong, but I think that having to play games on these different time zones, I don't think it's bad for the game. I think it's better exposure.
Joe, we're talking about college. We're talking about college here. We're not talking about in the NFL or the NBA or the NHL or MLB. Like, Joe, when you're in the NFL, okay, during the week, you go to practice 2, 3, 4 hours maybe, and then you get to go home, okay? Or you can stay and watch. You can do whatever you want, okay? That's not what college athletes get to do. College athletes, you know this as well as I do. At least this is how our schedule worked during the season. I woke up at 5 a.m., had to be at the gym at 5:30, already getting pre-workout in, lifting weights, going to shower, going in the film room, going to breakfast, going from class to 8 until 2:30 every single day, 5 days a week, going to practice. My first semester, I had to go to study hall, but I told my head coach, I'm going to get a 4.0. I'm not doing this shit. These people are idiots. Okay.
I did the same thing.
Okay, good. I'm glad that you did. Okay. Then you got to go to study hall. That's not what the NFL players have to do. And quite honestly, you might make one of those trips. You're not making multiple of those trips. And there are literally NFL teams that if they have a West Coast trip, they just stay out on the West Coast. Like, they don't come home. They don't fly back. So why don't they do it? And you're expecting college athletes to have to do it? The time, if this is remotely true, which, by the way, it's not. Okay, let me just say that John Skipper's a freaking idiot. Okay, like, he's just a flipping idiot. I don't like that merger. It's too coast to coast for me for you to try to merge a a conference. I just don't think it can work. And how are you going to separate it? Right? Like, are you just going to keep the ACC as one division and the current Pac, the Pac guys, you're going to keep, and what you just call it, the coastal division, because everything's along the coast? Could you imagine Miami going to Eugene?
Look, I think obviously there are scheduling complications with having to manage that and figure that out, of going from one tip of the country to the other, from going from Washington to Miami. That's a ridiculous trip to have to make, and have to make multiple of those in a week-to-week basis. I think that you can work around the scheduling parameters of having to play 2 cross-country games the entire season is maybe the limitation of that, and it has to be broken up. I think there's ways around it. My main thing with this is, if it is properly done and in accordance with player safety, why something like this needs to happen for the 2 conferences that are in the most danger of dying. Like, let's be honest, both of these conferences are lacking notoriety and are slowly drifting from relevancy. They are at that point where if they lose a couple of their top teams, if the ACC loses FSU or Clemson, they're kind of done. If the same thing with the Pac-12, if they lose Utah or Oregon, they're done. What you're getting, because there are top-heavy conferences with a lot of bad competition, is you are at least creating opportunities for more competitive matchups on a year-to-year basis. They need that for TV.
But take TV rights out of it for just a minute. It makes zero sense. It literally
makes. You can make 2 cross-country trips at the beginning and the end of the season and be fine.
But they wouldn't do that though, Joe. They wouldn't do that. You and I both know that they wouldn't do that. They would make Miami go to Eugene, and they would make players go from Eugene all the way to Miami. Look, you hate that I bring this up so much, but I really don't like cross-country unless it's neutral site games, okay? I don't necessarily like it. I don't like Utah going to Florida and Florida going to Utah. I don't think it's warranted for college athletes. I just don't. Unless you have time to be able to, especially, Joe, we're talking about multiple times. They need to go back to the Big 12 and tell the Big 12, listen, merge with the Pac. That's what they need to do more than anything. And because I'm going to tell you something. What's going to ultimately happen, half of the ACC is more than likely going to – but the thing about the ACC, Joe, from an ESPN perspective, they're the number 2 watched programming in the country. It's not the Big Ten, but they don't have any of the Big Ten. But they literally don't. They have really capable and comparable views. I think the problem here is that they're trying really hard to get these Pac-12 schools involved. And I got to be honest, who the hell does John Skipper – like, John Skipper's not in those meetings. So I will tell you this. I know this for a fact, and I told you this, and listen, you can back me up on this one. A week before – the news broke that the Big 12 was trying to poach Colorado, what did I text you?
That you had a source that indicated that.
Okay. I'm going to tell you what the same source is telling me.
Okay.
He sent me the same thing that you sent me today, and I figured you would send me this. He said that John Skipper might be the biggest idiot at ESPN in ESPN's history. He said the negotiations with ESPN has been going on for the Pac-12, has gone on with the Big 12 and the Pac-12. What they have been trying to do with the ACC is to give them more money and possibly add some higher level mid-major programs, right? Like there are some higher mid-major programs that are out there, right?
So you're saying like if they went and got like Tulane, or is that what you're referring to?
I mean,
does that save the ACC though? Like I don't think those are big fan bases.
I don't think that it saves it. I don't think that it saves it. But you got to take it from their perspective in this sense. Cincinnati was just in a playoff, right? Now they got beat by Alabama, but they hung around a little bit. Like it's not like it was just completely ass whipping when Cincinnati played Alabama 2 seasons ago. And before you start and look, Tulane and LSU hate each other, so I shouldn't be defending them, but I am. Let's not mistake that Tulane just went out there and hold on, spanked that Trojan ass. They spanked that Trojan ass with 3 stars. Now, I would hate that personally because then you have 2 Power 5 programs in Louisiana as an LSU fan. But I'm not saying Tulane. I haven't even heard anything about Tulane. Joe just brought that up. But my point is, don't tell me that like Cincinnati beat Notre Dame 2 seasons ago and got into the playoff. Like there have been mid-major programs that I think are more in this conversation from an ESPN perspective that they're trying to get in there more than merge the ACC and the Pac-12.
My only problem with bringing up some of those schools, though, is that their success was contingent on who was coaching them, who was leading them. UCF got into the Big 12 because of Josh Heupel. Let's be honest here. Cincinnati got into the Big 12 because of Luke Fickell. And those coaches are now coaching in the SEC. Just because they were doing well under fantastic coaches does not mean that their success is sustainable. I think that adding those mid-majors is fine. It's fine. It keeps them afloat. It keeps them alive, and it just adds depth to the roster of teams. But the ACC is losing FSU and Clemson away from being the American in terms of the quality of their teams. Like, I don't care about Wake Forest. And North Carolina isn't even that consistently competitive. I just don't see enough good competition. They're called what?
Rake Forest because they hit the baseball so damn good.
You when it gets baseball season, man,
I just got to be honest. Why college baseball? Joe, you want to get the closest thing to college football in the offseason?
It's college baseball.
Yep. Because on a random Tuesday night, you got that same atmosphere, dude. I'm just telling you. I'm telling you.
My main takeaway here, though,
and I know that Notre Dame baseball, since Link Jarrett left, they're like,
I'll only watch Notre Dame baseball. That's the only thing I'm going to watch. My main takeaway here, though, with this is that I have never really been enticed to watch ACC football. Like, I'll put it on, but I'm not excitedly watching Syracuse play against North Carolina.
Here's what the ACC needs. More desperately more than anything, and I'm going to tell you something. I think that they're about to get it. I think that they need the juggernauts to come back out. I think they need North Carolina. I think that they're getting there. Okay, with Drake May, I think that they can have a good season. I think Wake's had a good season. But you know who else, man? I think Florida State's I think that they're anticipating that Florida State game. And I will tell Joe, what happens if they get Notre Dame in the ACC?
Like, they're not going to, though. I just don't think that's going to happen.
Joe,
I think Notre Dame's smart enough to know that it is a dying brand.
Money talks and bullshit walks. When Notre Dame had to play a schedule, where did they go?
They went to the ACC.
They could have easily gone into the Big Ten. They could have easily done that.
No, because they already had a pre-existing relationship, so it would have been
that's
very uncomfortable if they did that.
Bro, you mean to tell me when the world almost burned up and we were playing football outside and they went to the ACC, you think the Big Ten's got more leverage than the ACC does? Because one thing that ESPN does not like doing is getting outbid.
No, I think that the ACC had an upper hand in trying to figure that out, but like the semantics of that are separate than that. As much as I agree with you that they're on the cusp, they're in a potential spot to be competitive again with Miami, hopefully on the rise, Florida State, Clemson, North Carolina. If they are as competitive as they've been in the past, it is a dangerous conference for garnering our attention. My issue is, though, is if they all have one good season this upcoming year and Florida State and Clemson dip, what do they have to hang their hat on? They're the Big East. And the Big East crumbled. It fell apart. It became the American. I just don't know if they have – it's less about if they can survive and all that. It's just, can they retain those big entities and those big brands? I am not confident that they're capable of doing that.
If a Florida State program gets back to where I think that they're going to go and they get a Notre Dame, Joe, they're gonna compete for the second best conference.
But if they get back up there, FSU's athletic director is going to bring up the conversation of we need to get more money than everyone else.
I don't think that. Because if you get Notre Dame in here, they're going to have to restructure their contracts.
But Florida State and Clemson are going to still want a favorable revenue split for the bigger teams.
They'll get it. I think they're going to get it.
But I feel as though unless they're giving them SEC money, why wouldn't they leave for the SEC?
Well, there's only two massive – because here's what I think. I think if Florida State came to the SEC right now, I don't think they're getting SEC money. From what I think. So my buddy Bill King, who's been doing XM radio, been doing radio a long time, he sourced this morning that some of these teams, like when they leave, like if Oregon went to the Big Ten as an example, they're gonna, like, say if they're paying Ohio State $80 million, they're gonna pay like Oregon like $45 to $50 million. Okay, because of the buyout that they would have to get those teams here, right?
Yeah.
So, and I'm going to tell you something. Some people are saying that they're going to do that with Texas and Oklahoma too, right? Like Texas and Oklahoma is not going to make the same as the SECs.
Well, it's a start.
For the first like 7 to 8 years. It's a long time. It's a long time. Because you think ESPN's not going to make their money back? They've lost millions, hundreds of millions on that Longhorn network. Millions. Yeah. So we'll see. I gotta be blunt with you. I'm so tired of this conference realignment shit.
I know it just needs to happen, man. It needs to happen. It just needs to.
It needs to happen, or stop meddling with it. That's where I sit.
I don't think we're ever going to get the meddling to stop, though. I think if
you get to 2 divisions, you will. I think if you get to 2 divisions, you will. And I'm going to continue to say it, man. You need a commissioner. They need to hire me. Give me $2 million a year, and I'll be your commissioner.
I think you got to compete with Josh Pate for that job. But Blake,
I told Josh Pate that Josh Pate knows. Oh, I am not scared. Pate State, listen to me. As I told you, I'm not scared of your big muscles and your bicep curls. I'm not scared of your bald head. I'm not scared of your trains. I'm not scared of Josh Pate. Now, don't tell him I said that, okay? But
I hope I don't clip that.
Don't tell him I said that. I mean, look, I think Pate would be good. Just make me his vice president. That's all I know.
The closing thought here, though, I just think that there's just so much control by these TV networks, and we've got so much proof about the stuff that we've talked about with how we can't even get the TV executives' names to be sourced on articles.
That's right.
We can't get it. They control so much of this, and it's not getting spoken about. It's not getting reported on. So they're ultimately going to impact the reshuffling and the realignment. And this is going to happen for the next 5 or 10 years, possibly. It's going to keep happening. It sucks. It's ruining it could ruin the product.
People are still going to pay. And they know that.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to ever stop loving LSU. You're never going to stop loving Notre Dame. And you know what the truth is? They know that. Okay. And so as long as they know that, they're going to do what they want to do. Exactly. Like everybody said, when the NFL went woke, just throwing it, like, that saying's out there. Okay. Just, they made their highest revenue ever in a year, ever.
No one's going to stop.
They were literally a $5 billion billion with a B. $1 billion business. Their TV ratings didn't go down. So it is what it is. All right. We will see you guys back here Saturday. I want to talk about the Raiola kid on Saturday.
Let's do it.
All right. Till then, knuckleheads, y'all have a good night. I still won. Peace
you
out.
Always win.
Yes, because I'm my own judge. So yes, I won. You have no fair shot. You know what, Joe? Let's just clip it and see what the people think. How about that?
All right, let's do it.
Later, guys.